the research on cognition enhancing drugs suggests that the main benefit is that they're motivation enhancers. You become more
Mm.
happy to do the psychological test or the exam or whatever. And that means that you do much better. It's not that you necessarily become smarter. There is some
No.
evidence for that, but it's mostly motivation.
Yeah. Yeah. I yeah, I can imagine that. That does make sense, I reckon. Especially with people with ADHD, it kind of, I think with Ritalin it seems to be one of those drugs that when people do take Ritalin, they seem to not have any distracting thoughts. It's that they have this really core motivation to do this one thing, and it fully captures their interest while they are using that while working. It's very interesting to see. Like
Oh, yeah.
one of the guys that I went to college with, he used to take Ritalin, and you could tell which days he had taken Ritalin and which ones he hadn't, because on the days that he had taken Ritalin, he could sit down and read a book and just read the whole book, and then he'd be able to talk about it afterwards. But on the days that he hadn't, he would be off doing 5,000 different things and have no idea what's going on and be absolutely chaotic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I recognize that a lot. I'm
Mm.
pretty confident that I don't have ADHD, but we are normally too scattered because our brains were not built for handling a complicated modern world, and
Yeah.
we're certainly good at overloading ourselves because there is always too many interesting books we ought to be reading at the same time, and
Yeah.
so we give ourselves a kind of ADHD.
Yeah, I think especially when there's so much media around, that there is there's a lot of people talking about a lot of stuff at the same time. So there's a lot of things to focus on at the same time, and everyone's trying to grab your attention, um, either through advertising or literally your friends and your family. It seems to just be this massive brawl for attention and focusing on stuff. And I think these days, instead of back in the old days where you could be like, oh, I'm just going to sit down and weave for 5 hours, these days you seem to have to instead be like, okay, what is important? What should I be focusing on and
Yeah.
what shouldn't I be focusing on? What is a waste of time and what's going to, I don't know, just completely either be helpful or completely unhelpful in the future.
Yeah, and figuring out what's useful and should be prioritized, that's quite often stressful because it's quite often uncertain. In
Mm.
the end, I think we should just aim at having a lot of time well spent, even though we might not exactly know why it's well spent.
Yeah,